This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I am your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Mick Hoffman, who has been the Executive Director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association since the spring of 2019. He is the association's fifth Executive Director, serving at virtually every level of the WIAA. Mr. Hoffman's most recently held role of Assistant Superintendent and Chief Operations Officer for Vancouver Public Schools. But before taking over as the Assistant Superintendent, he served as the District Athletic Director for Vancouver Public Schools from 2007 to 2015. Mr. Hoffman has represented at WIAA District IV on the WIAA Executive Board from 2016 to 2018, where he was a member of the Classification Committee and chaired the WIAA Recruiting Committee. Mr. Hoffman got his start as a language arts and social studies teacher at Fort Vancouver High School and Hudson's Bay High School in Vancouver, Washington. He has head coaching experience with boys basketball as well as boys and girls golf. Mr. Hoffman graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Education before earning a Master's of Education, all from the University of Portland. So Mick, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Yeah, I appreciate being here, Steve. Not quite sure why, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, this is about leadership, and we look at leadership at all different levels and different ways, and I think you're going to be great. So let's just start with a little context. So I did read in the bio that you're an educator, and that's how you started out, but just give us a little background on where you grew up and why you chose education and kind of the position that you're in currently.
Yeah, I mean, it was never really on my radar, honestly, till I was out of high school. I had two great parents, but my mom was 17 years old when she got pregnant in a small town in North Dakota, and my dad was 19 years old and a graduate of another small town and in the midst of being drafted into Vietnam. And so, I had teenage parents essentially, and one got swooped away to Vietnam, was fortunate enough to make it back. And, my mom, she ended up finishing her high school degree online in her 50s. And
Wow.
So, yeah. And so, for whatever reason, and I talked to them before, they're both gone now, but I would ask them, like, how come my brother and they're from a family, my mom's from a family of 9, my dad from a family of 5. And only a couple ended up going off to college. All of them are very good people, incredibly hard workers, skilled, what we would call the trades now, and had other certifications and successful in life. But college was never this like expectation for most of my family. And for whatever reason, my brother and I, we always knew we were going to college and had no idea why. That was so it was something my parents just really believed in for whatever reason, and they couldn't even really give me an answer other than they thought it was just the right thing to do. So growing up, school is important, and it was easy. And so got through high school and went off to a small school in Portland, Concordia, to play basketball. And I was going to be a business major, because when you go to college and you don't know what you're going to do, you be a business major, right? And I was there, and after a week, I'm like, what am I doing? I felt totally overwhelmed. Ended up falling back into a local community college, quit playing basketball. And after the first year of college, I quit going to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no direction at that point. Wasn't making the best choices. And a basketball coach actually called me up and said, from high school, said, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm living. I was working in a job. I was in a warehouse. I was making money. I didn't really have any bills. Like, life was good, I thought. And he's like, you can do this your whole life. And he got me to come out and help him with his JV basketball team. And so I started doing that for a few weeks. And I was like, this is pretty cool. This is actually fun. I enjoyed the coaching piece of it. And we're back with kids and, being a kid myself still. And he said, back then you had to be a teacher if you're going to coach. So I'm like, what? I'm not going to be a teacher. Me, a teacher? Are you kidding me? And
Yeah.
about that time, my wife, who we'd been dating since we were 15, 16 years old in high school. So I went to go back to school. I was going to be a teacher. And then we found out we were pregnant with our daughter. And so I quit on the same basketball coach twice at Concordia.
Right.
And I went to work full time. And that basketball coach who got me to get interested in being a teacher, he got the head basketball job and he made me a deal. He said, I'll make you my freshman coach. He goes, I heard you coach Tammy through labor.
Yeah. So you got some experience there, right?
So that was essentially my job interview. So he turned me loose on the freshman team. He just told me I had to stay in school. And so I worked full time, coached with him full time, and went to school full time. And I was fortunate enough to have a job waiting for me at Hudson's Bay High School, our alma mater. And I got into teaching and coaching and went from there. So it was a very non-traditional path that I was just lucky. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great. Well, tell us a little bit about what is the WIAA and what do you do, and just kind of give those that are maybe unfamiliar with it the context for that.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, WIAA is the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. A lot of people assume it's just athletics. So we're the governing agency for the state of Washington for high school athletics and middle school. And it's a little bit unusual here in Washington, like a lot of things. We do middle school, high school, which a lot of state associations don't. We do performing arts as well. So we have forensics and music and cheerleading and dance, in addition to your traditional sports. And our job by statute is to be the governing agency for that. And it essentially started as a volunteer organization in 1905. High schools were starting to play each other from small towns, and the adults were jumping in. And
Yeah.
people were like, hey, that's not fair. And we got to have that's not who decides what's fair and what's not fair. And so they pulled together this governing agency, the WIA. And so it was a volunteer organization up until 1933. And, in the bio, when I hear that thing, it still amazes me that I'm still only the fifth person to have the opportunity to lead this in that time. And so our job is to govern and try to make it as fair as possible. And with public, private, performing arts and that, we essentially are one of the only associations in the country that bring all the communities together around competition. And it's an awesome opportunity, which is what intrigued me about this job. It also creates an awesome opportunity for differences of opinions to come together around a passionate topic, being sports and activities. So yeah, I think it's, as an old social studies teacher, I think it's an awesome opportunity. It can be very taxing at times for those reasons. But we have great people around the state doing the work with us. So yeah, so essentially our job is to govern and make sure the rules are fair, make sure the rules are followed, and then put on state tournaments.
So what do you think has changed over the last 10, 20 years, what's different about intercollegiate or not collegiate, high school sports and also activities as you described? What's different now than it was 10 or 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think a big piece of it is the expectation of parents. There's way more angst, way more tension, way more. I mean, we have supportive of their teams. And that's what's cool about a high school,
Mhm.
softball team, is everybody's rooting for the name on the front of that, no matter what their politics are, no matter what their personal opinions are. I think what's changed is parents are spending so much time and money on youth sports. I mean, if you think about it, collegiate sports have been professionalized,
Yeah.
and youth sports, for the most part, have been commercialized. It's the largest unregulated business in the country. at the youth sport, club sport level. And our kids played it. I coached it. There's some people doing it really, really well, but there's a lot of people that it's a money grab. And these parents who want to see their kids play professionally or go to college, they're not getting the facts that only 1.3% get some type of scholarship. They're getting your kid's really special, and you should pay a few $1,000s to travel around the country and use all your discretionary income and have your family vacations be wrapped around this. And so by the time they get to high school, if their student's not on track for that Division I scholarship, which again, 1.3% get some type of scholarship, then there's this angst towards the coach or the pressure on the kid. So I think in the last 20 years, we've seen a huge shift. I mean, kids are playing more games by 6th, 7th grade than you and I played in our lifetime in organized sports. And they're burning out faster. The statistics support that. 11, 12, 13 years old as opposed to that high school age. So I think that's number one. And then just in the last few years, the politicizing of it. People using sports for their, the social, political topics of the day. And some of them directly impact the participation, and some of them are impacting the participation. But between the club sports and the pressure around that and the politicizing of sports, I think those are probably the two greatest ones. And I just really feel bad for kids who are caught in the middle of it.
It's really interesting you bring that up because, you see parents that are so focused on, getting that full ride scholarship, athletic scholarship. And you just said 1.3% of the people actually get them. Uh, Yet they spend that much money that a college
Yeah.
education would, take in youth sports. So it doesn't make sense. I think it becomes more of a status thing, right?
Yeah, 100%. And, for the parents who didn't have that experience or wanted that experience, I mean, I have a 10-year-old grandson who's into golf now. It's great. So I got a new golf buddy. And
Yeah.
he was doing this youth sport thing last year. And we really try to keep it in perspective. It's just, we're doing this for fun. And whatever comes of it, comes of it. Anything is a bonus other than the chance to play and
Yeah.
be with other kids and have fun and learn to compete, learn to fail and succeed publicly. Like that's a big risk for kids in today's social media. That's probably one of the other big changes, right? Anything we say or do, this right now could be viewed by people all around the country. And I could say one dumb thing, or you could adjust it in some way. And our kids are subjected to that every single day in their participation. But anyway, going back, we're walking down this fairway they're getting ready, and I'm just telling them, hey, have fun, kid. Like, this is great. We're out here on a sunny day. You get to play golf. We're out here to watch it. And I hear a father on the other side telling his son how well he needs to play because he's really counting on him to get a golf scholarship to pay for college. And I'm thinking, the kid's like 9 years old. Golf's enough. I get nervous over a 3-foot putt for a soda with my buddies. And there's this poor kid getting this. And I'm looking, and the dad's not laughing or joking around. And I'm thinking, that's not why they're out here. And so, yeah.
Too much pressure. Too much pressure.
Yeah, another one, a good friend of mine, a teammate of mine in high school, I was on the phone with him the other day. He's trying to figure out what to do with his son as he's entering 9th grade. And he's like, hey, he's going to be a Division I football player, and he's going to play in the NFL. And I'm thinking, wow, if that what the kid is basing his high school experience on, that's really tough. And maybe he will. We have those unicorns. And
Yeah.
my friend was very athletic. His wife was very athletic. So, there's some, God-given genes in there to help with that. But it still takes a unicorn to make it to that level. And I'm thinking, okay, I hope he does. But man, I sure hope he just enjoys wherever he goes to high school and plays for, that he enjoys every single practice with his teammates. Like, that's the key to this thing. And so, I don't think and he has the best intentions, and he's a great dad. And just that conversation that must be ongoing for the kid, that puts a lot of extra pressure on a 15-year-old kid.
Absolutely. I'm sure it really pushes the limit of what fun is, if you've got that kind of pressure. And the other thing is I've interviewed a ton of people on this program, and just throughout my life I've stayed interested, and you look at the bios of some of these professional athletes, And what most of them will say is that they played multiple
That's
sports all the way through high school. And what we see, I think, my left field observation is what we see is coaches and parents trying to get their kids to, pick the sport, like you said, when they're 9 or 10 years old, so that they can put all the emphasis on that, so that they can reach this high performance level. Which, I question whether that makes sense.
Yeah, no, the specialization that goes back to that youth sports conversation. And again, if a kid's a high level soccer player, they want to do individual instruction, small group instruction. There's people getting paid a lot of money to do that instruction. I
Yeah,
mean, I make a living off of um, amateur sports. I mean, my job is based on that. So I don't begrudge people, but it's like, at what expense? I mean, is
yeah,
it for the common good? Is it for the individual good? Uh, Do you really believe all these students that are doing it? And a good friend of mine, a mentor of mine, his granddaughter just blew out her knee as an eighth grader playing soccer, just moving. And he's wondering out loud, is it just one of those repetitive injuries that the statistics are showing we're seeing from kids who specialize doing the same kind of drills year round, for thousands of hours a year? I mean, it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert. I get it. But at eighth grade, I don't know if you should have your 10,000 hours in. And, we're
yeah.
seeing more injuries related to it. And, you know,
Yeah, so much. My background, I'm a physical therapist, so I saw
yeah,
this in real life, and not only the knees and the overuse syndromes and whatever, but the one we hear most about is the pitchers in baseball, throwing curves and specialty pitches and whatever at a young age, and how does that relate to a developing anatomy? It's scary. Those are things that there's time to do it. And I think, doesn't the research show that I don't think kids generally reach a higher level if they specialize or focus earlier on. I think it's more the experience and the love of the sport and whatever. And then, when they get older in high school and into college, and they start to really work on their craft, then I think that's where they really reach a higher performance.
yeah, absolutely. And there's transitional skills that you learn from other sports. I mean, the kid we coached back in Hudson's Bay back in the 90s, he got recruited by the University of Oregon as a lineman. He was a 3-year starter for them at the start of their big run playing basketball. But they saw how well he moved on the basketball floor and anticipated, played angles. And they're like, does that kid play football? And we're like, yeah. And they talked to him, and then they looked at some film on him, and they recruited him, and he played as a freshman, and he was a 3-year starting lineman for them on the offensive side of the ball based on what they saw playing basketball. I mean, there's
Yeah.
other skill, soccer players
Mhm.
understanding angles, and that in every sport that helps. And so, and again, if such a small, minute number, I mean, the number of professional athletes, I saw it again the other day, is like 0.08 for NBA and like 0.03 for NFL or vice versa. I mean, the chance of that is so minute. And then once you get out of your small pond of Vancouver or even Seattle and you go to that national level, I mean, the amount of football players coming out of Texas as
Yeah.
opposed to the state of Washington is tenfold. And there's a reason for that, of pure population. And, they have 16,000 high schools in California, and we have 417. And so the pool's a lot deeper than your local or even your own state when you're isolated like we are. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is keep it fun for our kids, because
Yeah.
for most of them, their last high school game is the last competitive event they ever play. And we want them to walk out of there with great memories that they'll never forget in the course of their lifetime.
Well, and I think you hit it right on the head. It's got to be fun, and if it isn't fun, then the odds. I mean, if you look at it from a business perspective, you just would never do it, because your return on investment is
Yeah.
probably not very good. But it reminds me too. I heard a quote from Wayne Gretzky once, or an interview, and And the question was, well, like when you were in high school and stuff, were you sad when the hockey season was over? He said, hell no.
Yeah,
He goes, I love baseball. I couldn't wait to get into
yeah,
baseball. I was sick of hockey by the time the
yeah.
season was over. So he's on to the next sport. So again, what's fun for kids and what do they get out of it? And that leads to my next question is, I think we can all agree is what you learn in competition and being part of a team and working with others and collaborating and all that is what is the beauty of sports when it relates to having a career and having relationships and so far in the future. It's a great learning opportunity.
Yeah, the NFHS put out a great article yesterday. It's on their website speaking to this very topic. And, one of the things that we've seen as research over the years around number of CEOs that played athletics, right? Not even at the Division I level, but just were athletes because the soft skills. I mean, I think that's one of the things we forget so much about. And, mentioned it briefly earlier, an athlete fails and succeeds publicly, and how do you handle that, and what does it take to prepare to even be in that competition, and the sacrifices you make. And fortunately there's more and more research. University of Wisconsin does a really good job of this. Also the mental health aspect. I mean, there's a huge focus coming out of COVID around young people and mental health in general, and that was one of the things they found while we were shut down and lockdown. That's why we put out an op-ed early on, was, hey, students need this time together. They need this chance to get out there and be physical in whatever event they're doing. It's good for their mental health. And so there's a lot of byproducts of this if we do it well and do it right for young people. And the research is just continuing to prove and react.
Yeah, absolutely. And myself as a executive leadership coach now, for people in business, it's so easy to use the sport analogies because
Yeah.
they're just there. It's like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what we need to do in business is what we learned being on the Little League baseball team or being on the football team because, you learn to work together, you have the same goal, you get motivated and inspired by others and good coaches, and it just all relates. So, it's such a uh, what word am I looking for? Experience that more and more kids should experience and would benefit from experiencing. But as we put more pressure on it and get more specialized, as you say, you worry about kids, like you say, burning out before they even really get the benefits of it.
Yeah, and if they're only focused on winning or their own personal success, the transferable skills that you get through participation and doing this, and that's why we're working. One of our focuses is on coaches' education. Like, how do we prepare coaches to be intentional? Because you talk about athletics teaching character, but it really reveals character. We can teach and set up opportunities for students to find out who they are and prepare them to adjust or enhance those kind of choices and leadership skills, if we are very intentional in the work we do around coaching and administration. So yeah, you think about your work, think about my work. You talk to teachers. That's why going through schools, our best principals were usually people who had been good coaches, and not
Yeah.
necessarily coaches that won a lot, because I could win a lot of games with good talent and bad coaching. But those are people because you're used to dealing with conflict, you're used to crisis management, you're used to preparation, evaluation, adjusting. I mean, all skills you got to do as a leader in any facet of business or society.
Yeah, and you just look at, what's the why and what's the goal. Again, I saw a recent interview with Coach K and some of his ex-players, and so okay, one of the most winningest coaches of all time in college basketball. Yet his players will tell you that when they came to campus or when he was recruiting them, he'd always say the same thing. He goes, "What I'm most interested in is helping you become." The highest level performing human you can be in life. And
Yeah.
if we focus on that and just help you become a better person and a better leader and a better community member, then we're going to win games. So the focus isn't on winning, it's developing that person.
Yeah, winning's a byproduct, right?
Yeah.
You have natural talent, you have developed talent, and now you have good people. Because under pressure, right? That's where we see the cracks in our character, our preparation. So if you've taken care of that up front, under pressure, you can thrive and you can watch other people fail and fall to the wayside as you and your team continue to strive forward. So absolutely.
Well, let's switch gears here a little bit. And since you brought up under pressure, in leadership, good leaders do perform under pressure. And in the bio, it said that you stepped into this position in 2019. Well, we all know what happened in 2020. So, that must have been just a very challenging time. And from what I understand, your position was to, what do we do with these kids? We know it benefits them to be involved in these activities, yet now we're in a shutdown, a lockdown, and now you have to also deal with government agencies that are going to try and tell you what to do and what not to do. So that had to be quite a leadership challenge.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I'll
Yeah.
bet.
I can always ask Mike, like, how'd you know this was coming? How'd you know it was time to pull the plug? Yeah, some of the benefit, I mean, they're actually, again, I'd say first and foremost, anytime that we do crisis management, and even going back to my previous work in the school district, that was really what my role was once I got out of the building administration and teaching. And you got to identify immediate short-term threats. So for us, it was like, okay, if a majority of our revenue for WIAA comes from state tournaments, obviously we're not having state tournaments. What do we do? So, well, let's reduce expenses and then let's find and still take care of people because we need to survive. And then find any revenue sources that are out there. So that was our immediate response, was survival. So then once we were stabilized, which happened very quickly, then we're able to start going, okay, now how do we support our membership? And truly, as a governance agency, it could have been pretty easy. We're governance, there's nothing to govern. Do what you want to do out there, 800 plus schools at the high school or middle school. But it really helped. One of the things that interests me in this job is making this more of a service oriented organization. What we have to do the governance, that's our task, but we really should be more service. So we started working with our membership, finding out what's possible. And then we were literally having at least weekly meetings with the Department of Health to identify what were opportunities that we could do. And then advocate, debate, what have you, on what was available and make them available to communities. And some of our communities, some of our schools had very different opinions on how this should be handled than others. Some were like, COVID doesn't exist, let's go back to regular routine. And some were, I'm afraid I'm gonna catch COVID over the screen. And so we, had to navigate and again, find out where people are at and base it on whatever data was coming at the time, which was probably the most difficult part of that, was what are we really dealing with? What is reality of this pandemic as far as this COVID thing, and what is possible? And so our team, I'm very, very fortunate that, Mike before me hired very well, and we've hired very well since to add to our team. And, when you talk about leadership, I think the most important thing you do on any leadership position is who you allow on your team. And we had
Yeah.
the right people on our team doing the work. And we went to work with our membership to provide opportunities. They could either utilize it or not. So we were confident we were going to survive as an association, be there whenever this ended. And now we quickly focused on what's possible. And that was just a daily debate, discussion, research project, development project. Sorry to go on so long, Steve, but
Oh, great.
we essentially said we started making our plans in pencil, and we soon learned we just make them in smoke. So as soon as we develop something and we get told no, we can't, absolutely not, or we found out it wasn't going to work, we just blow away that smoke and then write up the next plan. And it took us months literally to get back to that pencil stage where we knew we were on some more stable ground that we were now ready to build forward. But for a long time, we were literally dealing with smoke and trying to capture it and organize it.
Well, there was so much unknown going on for sure. Nobody really knew, the answers to a lot of these questions. But isn't it true that the sports, the high school sports, actually started functioning again before the schools actually?
Yeah.
So I mean, You must have had some input on that and some influence on that. So, how did you convince government agencies and officials that that was okay?
Well, one, we tried to figure out what's the benefit to them, and they were under a lot of pressure, so they wanted to get a win somewhere. So we said, why don't we use this kind of as like the experimental ground of getting students back, see where families, how do they feel about going back? We used this University of Wisconsin study that spoke to the mental health. Like once we had a better idea of the physical health risks, then have the Department of Health weigh that against the mental health risk.
Mhm.
And so that helped make our case to start participation. And then we were very, very conservative in what we were able to say was allowable. Well, anything we did had to be approved by the Department of Health and the governor's office. None of this was, WIA being able to do it. But we just started building those plans. And fortunately, the Department of Health and the governor's office started to see that the physical risk was being mitigated to the point that the mental health advantage or assistance for young people by being able to be in the same general area, outdoors, what have you. So that's how we're able to do it. I mean, you as an executive coach in your previous work, you get it. I mean, a lot of people have assumptions about what you're doing or not doing, and you can't let that noise change what you're doing. My wife tells me at times I got a detachment disorder, but it's really, I think it's more like you got to detach from the emotion of others when there's a critical task at hand. And that's probably, I've never talked to doctors or medical professionals who have to go in their emergency responders. I've talked to a lot of law enforcement in my previous work. That's kind of what they do. They got to detach from the emotional part of it to get the critical job done. So once we identified the critical job was to give kids a chance to start in doing something they love and enjoy at any level. Then we knew from there as we got permission and verification, we could expand it to competition. So our schools, we had some superintendents come at us really hard, thinking we were doing this just for self-preservation.
Yeah.
But those same superintendents, a few months later, were begging or asking when we were going to start full participation because students weren't showing up on the screen, and our public schools are funded by FTE headcounts.
Yeah,
And if the
okay.
students weren't showing up on the screen, they couldn't count them, and they were going to have to make significant budget cuts back then, which then would be very negative for students as well. So they were, again, it was for the betterment of the good, but they were now in the situation we had been in previously where they could directly impact, the long-term benefit of students, but they needed kids showing up. So you got to
Yeah.
go to school to play our stuff. You got to be eligible. You got to get grades. So that's the beauty is we keep kids connected to their education.
It's interesting. I think there's been a lot written and a lot discussed about how hard it was on kids during that year or two, as far as their academic preparation and growth. But I haven't heard a lot about the athletic piece. So, and that's a component, like you said. It's there's a reason that athletics are done through schools. It's all part of the growing and learning. Function that kids thrive in.
Yeah. In our community, our society, right or wrong, I saw a deal the other day, a headline, the highest paid public employee in every state but one, I'm trying to remember what state it was, is a coach at a college.
Yeah, yeah,
Highest paid public employee. Now just wrap your mind around that. I mean, now that's pretty crazy.
yeah,
um, that's the highest paid public employee in a school. Now they're generating a ton of revenue
right.
if they have a good program, but our society, for whatever reason, absolutely loves sports. It loves competition. I think it's part of the American fabric. That's what puts us out there. It also comes with a lot of baggage, and so our job is to try to keep that contained and available at the high school level, at least.
Well, unfortunately, you hinted at it before, and we talked about it at the high school level, but especially at the collegiate level, it's about money. I mean, the reason they're paid that is because it's a money, as you said, it's become professionalized, it's becomes a business, and so that's what happens. So there's always pros and cons to everything, but I think if you put too much emphasis on the money, I think it gets in the way.
Yeah, it's sad to see what's happening because it's gone from one extreme to another, which so much of our world has done in recent years. But I get at the time, a young man who we coached in Vancouver, he was another one, a different one who was down at University of Oregon a few years later. He's like, I got my coach over there making millions of dollars a year while I'm out there sweating it out in August, and I can't go home and buy a pizza, and I can't allow somebody to buy me a pizza by the
Yeah.
rules. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that's too far one way. Like there has to be a middle ground, and then how do you do that fairly for all sports that are non-revenue sports? And I wish that there wouldn't have been such a heels dig in and wait for the courts, because anytime you start legislating or using judicial decisions to make rules, you're going to lose because there's
Yeah.
too many unintended outcomes. And that's one of the things we just passed a significant transfer rule where students can transfer one time with a 40% penalty without moving. And when that first was brought, we had legislators wanting to legislate and essentially would have created a portal. They gave us 1 year. So went to the membership and said, look, here's where we're at. Here's a proposal. They're like, Mick, you're crazy. Maybe. We put this statewide committee together. I stayed out of it from there. My job was throw the grenade in the room, shake people up, and then educate. We had staff and board members and some of our most vocal critics around the state evaluate this 30 some meetings over 12 months. And they passed it 29-6 because once they were educated on the topic, it gave us a chance to keep control of our rules. It was a compromise. What a
Yeah.
concept in today's world, and so proud of our membership that they took the time to learn and they changed what I proposed. That's okay. It wasn't about my rule. I don't
Yeah.
honestly, the first time I've really talked about it that I was the one who originally brought it forward because I stayed out of the mix. It needed to be our rule. And that's what it became at the end, for all the right reasons. And now we'll implement it, see how it goes, and adjust if we need to. But if we want to have done something and all of a sudden Olympia makes that rule,
Yeah.
now we have no control. And we have states in that situation. We don't want to be one of them.
Well, you've been a coach, and it's just mind-boggling for me to think at the high school level or collegiate level that you build your team and you bring these people along and you've got this great team and you're headed into your quarterback senior year, and he comes and says, I think I'll go over and play at Bellevue High School this year.
Yeah.
So it's like that would just be devastating, I think, to the team and the coach and the system and everything. So I certainly see where that's a more fair way to handle it, I think so.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. The issue with transfers is they displace someone else. So here's maybe a kid who's
Yeah.
been in the program for
Oh yeah.
4 years of high school and did the youth stuff with the lives in the community. And all of a sudden somebody from the outside takes their spot. And again, for what? Well, maybe you win a state championship. That's a big deal. Maybe you take third and it only matters to the people in your community. A thing I like doing is I've done this for years. I started asking quizzes. Hey, who won the Super Bowl last year? Who won the NBA championship 2 years ago? Who won the World Series 3 years ago? And people, you get about in a sports group of ADs, maybe 50%. Then you start asking about collegiate champions. Then we go, okay, I'm gonna give you the easy ones, the high school champions.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Our own coaches and ADs cannot name not this in the second place or third place, but the state champions of some of our higher profile sports at our highest classifications. They have no idea. And my answer to that always is, so how important is winning then? Like it was huge to that community, and here you are as an active leader or coach, and you don't even know. Like, think about that. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm a big believer in, hey, I love to compete. I don't let my grandkids win in anything. Never let my kid, like, we're going to compete. We're going to make it fair. We'll adjust the rules a little bit to make fair competition, but competition is fun. But at the end of the day, it's the experience of the competition that is the value for all the reasons we talked about earlier. Man, at the collegiate level, it's gone past that. So,
Yeah, for sure. In doing a little bit of research for this discussion today, I also became aware of that you talking about FAIR brought in a program or proposed a program of seeding the the teams going into the state tournament because in the past it was just kind of drawn out of a hat, right? And
Yeah.
so sometimes the two best teams would play each other and one would be out, and so anyway, tell us a little bit about what that program you brought forward and how you had to sell that to your constituents.
Yeah, and again, it's one of those as a concept. Like my job as a leader is bring concepts and visions. And Cindy and Tim was involved in that. There's a lot of people who leaned in, but so the idea was one on the business side. If we have our best two teams, our state championship game in the first round, we don't sell a lot of tickets to the state championship game, right? So there's a business decision there. But more importantly, if the whole intent is to give teams a chance to play for the state championship, you want the best teams playing at the end. And so what we said is, hey, with technology now and to include our membership, and we are a member driven for the 1905 start association. So what we do is we tell each league, appoint somebody in every sport to be your representative. And so during the course of the year, those groups, so say it's 2B volleyball. So the 12 leagues each have a representative on the 2B volleyball seating committee. We give them a free subscription to the NFHS network, so they can watch teams from across the state. And it's their job to do the research and homework to see who, and rank those. And they're getting together during the year and doing straw polls and doing all that. And then once qualifications are done on a Saturday night, those groups meet Sunday morning and they say, okay, here's the teams that made it to our state tournament, line them up 1 through 16. They debate, they push, poll, vote, and then by noon, they kick those out to us, and then we go put them in there. And we've been tracking that data. I'm a big data guy. For a social studies teacher, I learned math's important. And so
Yeah.
we've been tracking the results ever since we did seeding. And what we track in every sport at every level that we seed is where did we seed them? Where did they finish? And then how were they ranked in other polls, whether it's Max Prep, Scorebook Live, our RPI through our schools today, what have you. And our seating committees, I am proud to say, dominate all those ranking systems and how they've done it. Our membership, whether they're coaches, ADs, principals, what have you, have put in the time and energy, and that's in every sport at every level that we have a seeded tournament. So yeah, that's one of those where you look back and you're like, wow, here is this idea. Now find the people that could make it happen. Luckily, we have them in our office. Go out and get people to join in on this crazy concept. So now we have other states saying, hey, what's that? When our staff gets to go out to these regional meetings or national meetings and present best practices, so they get to go brag about their work, which as a leader is incredibly important. They feel good about what they're doing. And we have other states saying, hey, send us that stuff. We want to use it. So we know a lot of especially our Northwest states are starting to pull that in to use it. So, those are one of the things as a leader, you got to take a lot of joy in that. So as you're getting through those pandemics and other issues, you have these wins along the way. So that will be something that will impact this association long after I'm gone.
That's awesome. You mentioned that the most important thing a leader can do is bring the right people together. So, if I were to poll those people on your staff, on your team, on your executive team, how would they describe your leadership style?
I think, they do this every year with our board, so I get the feedback. I think it's inclusive. We focus a lot on their own professional development. I try to personalize it. Hard driving, a lot of work. Because of my situation being up here, I can put in a lot of hours. I like being on the road. I think, I take a lot of pride in trying to be visionary, of trying to find ways, which sometimes creates a lot of change and a lot of work. But I think they are seeing the value of those things. So for people who've been here a while, we're trying to tell me your greatest challenges, and we've tried to adjust those. So I think it's very inclusive in a way that it's a shared leadership model. But there's definitely an understanding at the end of the day. I'm not going to allow anything to go forward that I don't fully support if I'm unsure, and we'll take some risks and challenges. So I think that we're going to be very accountable and over communicate to our membership. Those are things that we've really strived to do. So, I know My biggest issue is trying not to overwork them, honestly. There's so much to do. And it's trying to find that balance of not burning them out as we're working on preserving what they've done really well for a century here, and then finding opportunities to enhance it.
So there's so many people that kind of feel, or stakeholders, let's say, in this organization, as far as, it affects the schools and the kids and whatever. So who are you responding to the most? Who takes, like you say, a lot of your time? Is it athletic directors in school districts? Is it booster clubs? Is it individual parents that just say, "I want to talk to you because my kid isn't getting a fair shake"? I mean, what,
Yeah.
who are you talking with, and who takes most of your time?
Yeah, most of our day-to-day communication is with our athletic directors and then our 6 regional district directors, trying to keep them informed and have them be that conduit of information. We have 225,000 participants every year, 800 schools. So it could be a huge volume of calls. If it's a parent issue or something like that, especially around a school issue, we just send them right back to the schools. At the local level, school guy, that's what I appreciate about the office. We're continuing to do that. So they can solve it at the local level way better than we can. We're not the employers of coaches or what have you. So I would say we spend most of our time communicating with our athletic leaders and then our tournament managers. Because I'll tell you, Steve, a lot of people don't realize we have 13 paid positions in this office, and we have 20 sports. We run over 120 state events during the course of the year. So we rely literally on thousands of paid and unpaid volunteers. So we spend a lot of time getting them ready. Andy Barnes in our office, he's going to have, is it 12 golf tournaments going on next week
Oh,
across the state.
yeah.
One guy. I don't know if you've ever run a fundraising golf tournament. You usually have a committee, and it takes a long time to run one tournament that no one really cares about in the scramble other than who cheats the most with the string. And we're
Yeah.
running highly competitive tournaments across the state for state championships that he has to do. So you can imagine how many people he's relying on at all those sites. And him and I will float around the state next week and get to most of them. And so we spend a lot of our time communicating with those that are willing to essentially donate their time. Sometimes we can buy them a hot dog, but because they love high school sports.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's very needs to be and is a very collaborative process. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, what is the generally speaking, is the participation in high school sports increasing in numbers or decreasing?
Yeah, it's nationally the data is it's increasing, and in Washington we're seeing an increase. Specifically, girls wrestling has exploded, and boys wrestling's increased, but girls wrestling has
Yeah.
really gone up. Tackle football has made a recovery back from those CTE concerns back in the 2000s with some of the safety provisions, and so that's another one. Track and field is our largest one. Teams, schools do a really good job of recruiting. So in general, we are seeing an increase in participation. So,
And you said that you also deal with other activities. Does that include music programs in schools?
yeah, yep. Washington Music Educator Association is a partner of ours. They just had their state tournament over at Central Washington, and we were working with their leadership. Matter of fact, the CFO and I today to finalize the work. They do a ton of work for
Yeah.
it. We have forensics that does
Well,
that, and then we have dance and drill. And I'm telling you, if people have not been, especially state dance, but state drill or state cheer,
yeah.
it's as close as what I would say. I mean, maybe swimming is and gymnastics, but in dance and drill, you might have 30, 40 people out there competing for 3 minutes, and one person makes one mistake. That whole year of preparation, you're not winning that championship. It's like and they're cheering for each other in the stands, the competitors. It's about the purest competition we have. And when they don't win, it's real tears. I mean, we're dealing with protests and just like any other sport, but they cheer for each other. So it's a different kind of competition. It's really what competition should be. I want to knock you out, but I'm going to do it fairly. And if you knock me out, I'm going to shake your hand. And I'm still going to cry. And if I win, I'm going to pick you up and give you a hug and help wipe your tears. And that's essentially what we see in a lot of our competition, but especially in those lower profile sports that people don't get out to. So.
Sportsmanship is everything. And again, that's a life skill that you learn at a young age. And so that's why it's so important. The reason I brought up music is because again, that's another thing that, research after research studies shows that, kids that participate in music programs and do that just tend to do better in school generally. And, a lot of times when budget cuts happen or whatever, what's the first thing they want to cut, is a music or a sports program. So.
Yeah, that's been a lot of the messaging, and you're right. I mean, think about the discipline that it takes to practice to aspire in music, whether it's playing instrumental or singing. So, um, Mike was a music guy, so I'm learning on the job. So they don't get nearly. I can't help him like he was able to. So I'm learning, but the appreciation I have for it because it's not a skill set I have. So to listen and watch young people perform at the levels they do is like I can't even begin to explain it based on my novice perception. But yeah, we're really messaging to our superintendents that the extracurriculars are an investment. And I use the example I used with you all the time around the FTE. So, the national average is like 1.3% of a school district's budget goes to extracurriculars. So if you're driving FTE, students are staying connected to your schools because you have quality music program, right? 'Cause parents are shopping. I mean, we're a choice state. They have the right by law to pick their schools. And so that's one, we're trying to align our transfer rules. But number two is if they have solid programs, if they have good human beings coaching and leading and offer the programs, kids are going to stay. And in turn, schools are going to get funded. So the cost of that, so when we see those cuts, that's the first thing we ask the school districts are you exasperating your budget issue by doing this, or are you going to actually help it? And so, part of our role is to continue that messaging.
So this is probably a loaded question for you and your position, but I'll ask it anyway. Um, are you optimistic with high school sports and activities and sports and whatever, or are you kind of concerned about where it's headed?
No, I mean, I think people really are seeing the value of it, especially what's happening at the collegiate level. I mean, if we lose education-based activities, it's going to be like club sports, where instead of 225,000 participants, we're going to have 25,000. It's going to be the very most talented because people will pay their way, and it's going to be the people who have the money. And the competition, I mean, go watch the most talented kids in AAU basketball or what have you. It's parents and a few friends there. And so the experience for the kids is nothing close to what they get at the high school level. Now, most of them have a different motive. So I think our superintendents see the value of it. I think they see the value of keeping students in their schools by offering it. So I think there's a business decision around it. But at the heart of it, I think our legislators understand the value of it. I think OSPI, in talking with Chris Reichdahl, definitely sees the value in athletics and the arts as part of the educational experience. There's too much research to argue it. So we're actually advocating that education-based activities become part of the general funding model. If legislators are trying to find a way to justify giving more money, fund these programs, keep kids invested, and let them learn these soft skills that we're trying to build all these specialty programs to do within the curricular day. We already got it figured out at the extended day. Fund it and let them keep doing it. So I think there's too many people who have done it in decision-making positions, and I think there's too much research to show the value of it to be able to justify cutting it.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's great to hear. So, Mick, in anticipation of our discussion today, is there anything that I haven't asked you or we haven't covered that you want to be sure and get in the program today?
No, I mean, I had written some notes on topic and I didn't even realize I flipped them over at one point to take a peek if there was anything. So not really. I mean, I wasn't quite sure what we are going to talk about. When you just talk about the journey, I mean, a good partner of mine out of Alaska, he always, his comment is, he talks about the 51 executive directors around the state, and he will be in a meeting and listening to the lawyers and talking about all the things, when you talk about the survival of high school and education base, and we'll be in there getting all the bad news, doom and gloom. And he's like, no matter what, we are the lucky PE and social studies teachers that for whatever reason got the opportunity to lead this opportunity, because there's not a lot of jobs that when you get done with your work, you can actually feel like you've benefited and helped other people.
Right.
Like you didn't just create a widget, you actually have made other people's lives better.
Yeah.
And you can make a living doing it. And when we walk away from an event or we get to see a kid's face walking onto a court or a field and then walking off, whether they win or lose, like what they're feeling at that moment, they're going to feel that their whole life. And if they're coaches and we've done it right, they're going to learn something that they're going to in turn positively, and it's a flywheel effect. And so we're very lucky. I'm incredibly lucky to have this opportunity. So you can come at me with a pandemic, you can come at me with the culture wars. At the end of the day, we're going to keep kids first because we have an opportunity that at most people's jobs, they don't get to do that. And so, and I'm just very, very lucky to have thousands of people around the state willing to work with us on it.
Well, and to your point, like I said, I've done over 250 of these interviews, and most of the successful people that I interview will tell you that there's someone back in their life, and it was usually a teacher or a coach
Yeah.
who believed in them, gave them some mentoring, gave them an extra push, whatever it was that they credit now with the success of their life. So it's like, it's just so important, and I think it's an easy sell if people just look and remember what they went through.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we remember what we feel.
Yeah,
And emotions come through in sports. And people who choose to teach and coach in the high school space, the middle school space, they make a living, but they can make a lot more money doing other things in other places. So they have a greater um, desire than just getting a paycheck. And so, yeah, I
yeah,
think as long as we keep having people in leadership positions that understand that, this opportunity will continue well beyond my time.
for sure. Well, Mick, at this time in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question, and that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
Um, you know, I think as a leader, I mean, you gotta leave your ego out of it. We all have egos. I mean, that's how we get here. That's part of who we are. But I think the biggest thing you can do is assume you don't have the answer, assume you can go find the answer. But to do that, you have to listen to the need. And so if we start from there, that I don't have the answers, but I might be able to help you find the answer. And that's our job as leaders, is to solve and make things better, solve problems, make things better. So I think my wisdom is assume you don't know, be confident you will. And the process of how you get there is the key to positive leadership.
Very well said. That's awesome. Well, Mick, this has been a real pleasure. You came on here not sure what to expect, and this was great. I mean, I learned a lot, and I think others are going to learn a lot as well. So I appreciate all that you do for our state and our kids, and the leadership that you do provide. And I think we should also thank our mutual friend Tim Thompson, who got us together. He was the athletic director at Sumner School District, I think, for many, many, many years, and just a great guy, and someone who said we should meet, and I'm glad he said that. So
Well, I was very humbled when I saw some of the people when I did my research of who you were. That's why I went back to like, why is Mick Hoffman here? And so I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this and to be able to share this messaging with others who are interested to continue to advocate for these education-based opportunities.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your time today. It's a real pleasure, and maybe you and I and Tim can meet in Tacoma for lunch one of these days, and continue the discussion. So
That'd be
thanks.
fantastic. I'd love that.
Okay. Take care. Good to
Okay,
see you.
thanks, Steve.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.